The drumbeat had barely faded when they came. Under the hush of celebration, with meat still roasting and children laughing, they struck. 5 riders, faces painted, bodies cloaked in stolen deer hide, moved like shadows through the edge of the camp. Before anyone could scream, they were already dragging her. Naira had just turned 17. She was grinding dried corn with her cousin, her head wrapped in a red shawl her mother had woven. Her laugh had just echoed into the cold air when the first hand clamped over her mouth. She kicked, clawed, but they were prepared. They knew who to take. She was the chief's niece. Her abduction would cut deep. Talon saw it all too late. He had been helping the elders with a fire pit when the scream, short, muffled, cut across the clearing. Then came the sound of hooves. He turned. He ran. But by the time he reached the woods, only a swirl of ash and snow remained, and deep gouges in the dirt showed where she had been dragged. The camp erupted in chaos. Warriors grabbed weapons. Women pulled children back. But the riders were gone. Their tracks vanished near the frozen creek, where the land forked into 3 directions. The trail could have led anywhere. That night, no one slept. Chief Wiyaka, Talon's uncle, stood motionless near the dying fire, eyes fixed on the spot his daughter had been taken. He spoke no words. His fists trembled once, then stilled. The council gathered, voices hushed and tense. They spoke of sending scouts, of preparing defenses, of waiting for more signs. But Talon didn't wait. He packed before dawn, flint knife, water skin, 2 pieces of dried meat, and Naira's necklace, which she had dropped during the struggle. He tied it around his neck like a vow. "She's not your sister," an elder muttered as Talon mounted his horse. "You're barely a man." Talon didn't answer. He didn't look back. The path they took wasn't hard to guess. The snow still held broken branches, a scrap of red cloth, and a horse track, shallow but fresh. Talon followed it like blood in the water. His breath fogged the air, but he never slowed. By midday, the trail bent into Black Elk territory, land known for swallowing strangers. Their tribe and Talon's had long-standing wounds. Some said the Black Elk cut out tongues to silence screams. Still, Talon pressed forward. He found clues: a cold fire pit, a bone stripped of meat, and then a cough, weak, human. He dropped to his belly, crawling through brittle reeds to a rock outcrop. Below, a girl slumped against a tree, blindfolded, hands tied. Naira. His chest locked. Relief and rage twisted inside him, but instinct held him. A guard sat nearby, spear across his lap. Others might be close. This wasn't the moment. Talon slid back the way he came, fast but silent. He didn't know the full plan yet, only that he wouldn't leave her again. That night, he made a fireless camp under a fallen log and carved rough thoughts into the dirt with his knife. He had one chance, one sister, one life to give. Tomorrow he would fight, even if he had to do it alone. Talon didn't sleep. He lay beneath the fallen log, eyes wide in the darkness, every sound sharpened by fear and fury. Somewhere nearby, his sister sat bound, breathing through pain and terror, waiting for something, someone that might never come. He couldn't bear the thought. At dawn, he rose. He checked his knife, tied the deer hide tighter around his boots, and moved like a shadow through the woods. He'd marked the location carefully the night before. The girl was still there, still slumped, but her position had changed. She was leaning forward now, breathing shallow. The guard who had watched her was gone. In his place stood 2 others, both younger, talking in low voices and eating something from a pouch. Their weapons rested against a tree a few feet behind them. Talon studied them. 2 spears. One had a bow, but the quiver was slung on a tree branch. They weren't expecting trouble. Why would they? They thought they were deep in their own lands. He could wait until they slept. Or until more arrived and ruined his chance forever. He made his choice. It was fast, brutal. He came down from the hill like a wolf. One of the men looked up, too late. Talon drove his knife into the side of his neck. The second lunged, grabbing for the spear, but Talon kicked it away and tackled him to the ground. They wrestled in the dirt, fists and knees and choked gasps, until Talon smashed a rock into the man's temple and silence fell. His hands shook, his chest heaved, but there was no time. He crawled to Naira, cut her bonds and caught her as she fell. "It's me," he whispered. "Talon, I'm here." She blinked slowly, eyes swollen, lip bloodied, but she nodded. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I did." He lifted her over his shoulder. She was light, too light, starved and cold. He wrapped her in the extra shawl he carried and turned back the way he had come. But luck was not theirs. Before they reached the fallen log, a shout tore through the forest, then another and another. The camp was not as small as he had thought. There were more of them. Horses whinnied, branches snapped, voices rose in rage. He ran, through trees and brush, feet slamming frozen dirt, lungs on fire. Naira clung weakly to his back. Behind them, hooves thundered. Arrows tore through the trees. One sliced his shoulder. He staggered but didn't fall. He reached the creek and splashed across it, slipping, nearly dropping her. On the far side, he dropped to a knee, gasping, blood soaking his sleeve. He couldn't run much farther. He turned. They were coming. 5 riders fast. He kissed Naira's forehead. "Get behind that log. Don't move. Don't speak. No matter what." She clutched his arm. "Talon, no!" He stood, knife in hand, chest rising like a drum. He wasn't ready, but he was resolved. They came like thunder, hooves shaking the earth, blades drawn. Talon didn't flinch. He planted his feet in the dirt and let out a roar that split the cold air like fire. He would not let them take her again. Not while he breathed. Talon had never killed before the day before, but something inside him had shifted, cracked open like bone under pressure. Now, as the 5 riders bore down, he didn't feel like a boy anymore. He felt like steel. He crouched, feet apart, knife gripped tight. He didn't run. The first rider came fast and leaned low with a war club. Talon ducked left at the last second, slashed the horse's flank, and the beast shrieked, throwing the man. Talon lunged, drove his blade into the rider's chest before he could rise, pulled it free, and turned just in time to dodge an arrow. The second rider circled wide, but Talon grabbed a dropped spear from the snow and flung it with every ounce of rage inside him. It caught the man in the shoulder, unhorsed him, and he rolled, screaming. Talon grabbed the rider's bow from the ground, but the string snapped as he pulled it. Useless. He tossed it and ran, drawing them away from Naira. She was hidden, shivering behind a log, just as he told her. He needed to keep it that way. The third and fourth riders came together, flanking him. Talon ducked into the trees, weaving through pines. He leapt a frozen root, rolled under a branch, then doubled back. One rider slowed to track him. That was his mistake. Talon launched from the brush, landed on the rider, and dragged him off. They tumbled. Talon got to his feet first, drove the knife down. A shout behind him. Too late. He turned just in time to catch a club to the ribs. He flew back, hit the earth hard, and stars blinked in his eyes. The fifth rider was older, broader, and smarter. He stayed on his horse, watching. He barked a command, and the last attackers circled behind Talon. The boy's breath came ragged. Blood from his mouth now. But he rose. His sister was still watching. He couldn't fall yet. The circling rider swung again. Talon ducked, then drove his shoulder into the horse's side. The animal reared. The rider lost his balance, and Talon lunged, grabbing the spear still tied to the saddle. He ripped it free and turned in a blur, thrusting it into the man's chest. Then silence. Just him and the last rider now. The older one. The leader. He didn't charge. He dismounted slowly, eyes fixed on Talon like he'd seen a ghost. "You're not even a warrior," the man growled. "No," Talon said, panting, face streaked with blood and sweat. "But I'm her brother." The man grunted, tossed aside his weapon. They would settle this with hands. Talon hesitated only a second before charging. Fists met flesh. The man was stronger, older, and faster, but Talon fought like someone with nothing left to lose. He took blows, landed his own, and when he felt the world going dim, he clawed at the last memory of Naira's face and struck again. He caught the man's throat with his elbow, twisted, and brought him down. Then silence. Real silence. No more riders, no more hooves. Just breathing, his and Naira's. She emerged slowly, limping, eyes wide. "You killed them," she said. "All of them." Talon dropped to his knees. "I didn't want to." "But you did," she whispered. "For me." He nodded. "Always." Snow began to fall again, soft and slow, as if the land itself was exhaling. But it wasn't over. The riders might have belonged to a larger camp. Others could come. They had to keep moving. Talon stood, every part of him aching, and took her hand. "Let's go," he said. "We're not safe yet." Talon's legs were trembling. His shoulder throbbed from the arrow graze, and blood soaked through his tunic where bruises turned to cuts. But he didn't stop. Naira leaned against him as they moved, her breath faint but steady, her weight more emotional than physical. Every step they took away from the battleground felt like stealing time. The forest had grown colder, the shadows longer. They needed distance, and they needed cover. Talon knew the land well, every stream bend, every ridge, every hunting trail. He took them into the deeper pines, away from the creek and into the rocky hills where even foxes hesitated. Naira spoke little. Her voice had grown raw, her face pale beneath the bruises, but her grip on his arm was strong. She didn't ask what happened back there. She didn't need to. The blood on his hands said enough. Just before nightfall, they found a cave, narrow, half-collapsed, barely deep enough to hide. Talon checked for animals, dragged some dead branches across the entrance, and helped her sit. Then he collapsed beside her. "Sleep," he whispered. "I'll watch." She didn't argue. Her head fell to his shoulder. He sat there in the dark, eyes open, knife ready, every nerve still alert. But his body betrayed him. Somewhere between breaths, exhaustion pulled him under. He awoke to the sound of a twig snapping. His eyes flew open. Naira was still there, asleep. But something was moving outside the cave. Slowly, carefully, he crawled forward and peeked through the branches. A flicker of movement, a shadow slipping between trees. Then another. He counted 2, maybe more. Not riders this time. Scouts, moving slow, searching. Talon felt his stomach twist. They must have found the dead, must have followed blood trails. They were being tracked. He pulled back and shook Naira gently. "Wake up! We have to move! Now!" She blinked, dazed. "Talon! They're coming!" She didn't question him. She rose, still weak, but steadier than before. He wrapped her in the blanket again and slipped out of the cave, keeping low. They didn't go downhill. That's what the trackers would expect. Instead, he took them higher, through the rough shale paths only mountain goats used. Every stone they dislodged echoed. But the forest swallowed the noise quickly. Hours passed. No fire, no rest. Just climbing, ducking, listening. At one point, a hawk cried overhead, and both of them froze, hearts hammering, until it passed. Eventually, they reached the upper ridge. From there, they could see the far valley. Home was days away still, but they could see its curve on the horizon. Talon allowed himself a single breath of hope. Then a whistle split the air behind them. Not a bird. A signal. The scouts were closer than he thought. He grabbed Naira's hand, and they ran. Through thorns, past icy puddles, until Talon's foot caught a root and he went down hard. His legs screamed with pain. Naira dropped beside him. "You can't run anymore," she whispered. "Then I'll crawl," he hissed. "They're too close." She looked around, eyes fierce. "No, we hide. Look, there." She pointed to a low outcrop, almost invisible from above. Together they dragged themselves into the crevice. They lay still, breath shallow. Moments later, shadows passed just yards above them. Silent, fast, armed. The scouts. They paused, sniffed the air, then kept going. Talon didn't move. Neither did Naira. They waited until long after the sounds faded. Then she turned to him and said, "You saved me again." He shook his head. "Not yet, but I will, even if I have to crawl the whole way home." By morning, Talon could barely stand. The fall had worsened his leg, and the swelling was fierce. Every step was pain. Every breath felt tight, as if the mountain itself pressed on his chest. But Naira kept pulling him up. When he staggered, she slipped under his arm. When he winced, she pressed her palm to his back. "You carried me," she said quietly. "Now I carry you." The words gave him something deeper than strength. They moved again, slow but determined, taking a crooked path down the ridge. The trees thinned, replaced by patches of winter grass and wind-bent scrub. Below them, a frozen stream cut through the land like a silver scar. That was the path home. But Talon knew the scouts were still searching. If they crossed too soon, they'd be seen. If they waited too long, his body might fail. They made it halfway down the slope when Talon fell again. This time, he didn't rise. His hands clenched in the snow. His eyes shut. "Just leave me," he rasped. "You can find your way now." "Don't say that," Naira snapped. "We're almost there." "You don't understand. My leg, if they find us—" "I'm not leaving you," she said. "You didn't leave me, not even when they had weapons and horses and rage in their eyes. You came anyway. Now it's my turn." She pulled him to sit against a rock. Then, without asking, she tore a strip from her dress and began binding his leg tighter. He hissed through his teeth, but let her work. "I need fire," she said. "Just small, just enough to warm water. There's a plant nearby, I remember. Mother used to chew it for pain." Talon grabbed her wrist. "If you light a fire, they'll see. Then they'll see. And I'll be ready." He looked into her eyes. The girl he once protected was gone. In her place stood someone fierce, reborn from fire and fear. He nodded. She moved fast, found the plant, and used flint and dry bark to make the smallest flame. She boiled water in a shallow stone and dropped in the crushed leaves. Then, gently, she helped him drink. "It'll make your head heavy," she warned, "but it'll numb the leg." Talon rested back. "Stay close," he whispered. "If they come, I'll scream loud enough to bring every spirit in the mountains." She smiled faintly. "Then I'll run." He drifted into sleep, dreamless and dark. When he woke, night had fallen. His leg still throbbed, but the edge of pain was gone. Naira was curled beside him, one hand on his chest, the other gripping the knife he had dropped. He sat up slowly. She stirred. "Still alive?" she asked. "Barely." "Good, because I think we can move again." They waited until dawn, then began the final descent. Talon leaned on a branch like a crutch. Naira walked ahead, alert. The stream was close now, so close. But then, a sound from behind. A cough, a low grunt. They froze. 2 men, maybe more, talking in a language they didn't know. The scouts again. They were closing in. Talon gritted his teeth. "We can't outrun them." "We don't need to," she whispered. "Just trust me." She grabbed his hand, pulled him toward the stream, and into a thicket of sharp thorns. The scouts followed the clearer path, but Naira's way doubled back, looping them around a boulder and into a hidden crevice where river reeds grew tall. There they crouched, unseen. The footsteps passed. Talon looked at her. "How did you know that path?" "Because I used to follow you when you went hunting," she said. "You just never noticed." He smiled, despite everything. "You were always trouble." "Still am," she whispered. "But I'm going to get us home." By the second day, Talon's fever had begun. His leg, though tightly wrapped and treated with the bitter plant Naira found, had turned red and hot to the touch. He didn't complain, but Naira saw the way he clenched his jaw, how his grip on the walking stick weakened with each mile. The stream had guided them far enough west to cross into neutral hunting ground, land with no claim, only superstition. Stories said spirits whispered through the trees here, and even warriors kept their voices low. But fear of spirits was nothing compared to the men still chasing them. Just before dusk, Naira spotted smoke, faint, distant, but not theirs. She ducked low and pulled Talon down beside her. From the ridge, she saw them, 4 riders building camp near the river bend. The same paint on their faces, same curved blades. One of them dragged something wrapped in fur. Another laughed as he kicked at a bone pile. Talon whispered, "Not scouts? These are raiders." Naira's eyes narrowed. "The ones who took me." "Maybe," he said. "Or worse." Talon tried to rise, but his legs buckled. He grunted, catching himself. "We go around," he said. Slow and quiet. But Naira didn't move. Her jaw set. "If we keep running, they'll follow us home. And if we fight, we die," Talon snapped. "I don't care about me," she said. "But you're bleeding through your wrap, and if they catch us, they'll finish what they started." Talon sighed. "What do you want to do?" She looked back down the ridge, then at the thick stand of trees above. "Smoke blows east. If we light a second fire in the west, they'll go investigate. And while they do, we sneak in and take their horses." Talon blinked. "You want to steal their horses?" "You said it yourself," she said. "We can't outrun them, but their own horses can." For a moment, Talon saw the little girl she used to be, the one who'd snuck honey cakes before dinner and always ran faster than the boys. And now she was the one dragging him through the jaws of danger. "Fine," he said. "But you light the fire. I'll ready the knives." They moved fast. Talon limped through the rocks, gathering pine needles and dry grass. Naira hiked to the upper trees and struck her flint. The smoke rose clean and pale, curling just high enough to catch a watchful eye. 10 minutes later, shouting echoed below. The raiders split. 2 men on foot, 1 on horseback, heading toward the smoke. 1 remained behind. Naira waited for Talon to signal, then crept down through the back edge of camp. The lone guard was distracted, trying to fix a leather strap on his saddle. She moved like a shadow. Talon, hidden behind a tree, threw a rock into the brush. The man turned. That was enough. Naira lunged. She didn't scream. She just drove the blunt edge of a branch into his back. He staggered. Talon dragged himself forward and slammed the man with his crutch. The guard dropped, unconscious. Naira cut the ropes on the nearest horse, whispered to it gently, then helped Talon up. "Can you ride?" she asked. "We'll find out," he groaned. She threw a blanket over the horse's back, hoisted Talon up, then climbed on behind him. The others would return soon. They didn't wait. Naira kicked once, and the horse bolted into the dark. Behind them, voices roared in alarm. But the forest swallowed the sound. They rode like the wind had chosen them, not looking back. The night closed in, cold and fast. But Naira didn't stop until the campfires behind them were gone. Only then did she let herself breathe. "We're not safe," Talon murmured, head slumping. "No," she said, "but we're close." Talon's grip on the horse loosened with every passing mile. His head swayed. His chest rose in shallow, uneven gasps, and his fingers trembled as if the fever were eating through his bones. Naira felt his weight slump against her, heavier by the minute. "Talon," she whispered, shaking his shoulder. No response. "Talon, wake up!" His eyes fluttered open, then shut again. "Just a minute," he muttered, voice barely there. "Just resting." "No," she said firmly. "No resting. We're not there yet." But his body had stopped listening. The cold had seeped in too deep, the blood loss too heavy. He slumped forward, nearly falling from the horse. She tightened her arms, pulling him back, teeth clenched against the strain. "Then I ride alone," she whispered, reaching around him to grab the reins. Her hands barely fit over his, but she held tight. The horse sensed the shift, slowed a little, unsure of the new command. Naira pressed her knees against its sides, guided it with urgency, voice low and calm. "Come on, we're not stopping." The trees ahead were familiar now. The path bent toward the old rock shaped like a bear's face, one of the markers her mother used when teaching her the hunting trails. Home was near, but the trail was not empty. As they rounded a bend, Naira heard it, movement, a rider behind them. She didn't look back. She couldn't afford fear. Her brother hung between life and death, and she was all he had left. She kicked the horse, urging it faster. Branches whipped past. The sound behind her grew louder. Hooves pounding. One man, maybe two. She reached for Talon's knife, but it was still in his belt, tucked beneath his weight. She couldn't reach it without letting go of the reins. The trail narrowed. Rocks on one side, a steep drop on the other. No room to turn, no place to hide. Then she saw the broken tree ahead. A thick limb had fallen across the trail, but just enough space remained to slide under. She lowered her body, pulled Talon with her, and leaned forward. The horse ducked instinctively. Behind her, the pounding hooves stumbled. A loud curse followed. A crash. She didn't look back. She kept riding. 10 more minutes, and the land opened. Smoke in the distance, clean, white, and curling from the longhouses of her village. Home. Her heart pounded with hope. She urged the horse faster, shouting now. "Help! Someone! Please!" The guards at the edge of the village looked up, startled. One dropped his spear and ran toward them. "Naira!" he gasped. "Is that—" "He's hurt," she cried. "Please, help him." The moment they reached the village border, hands reached up to catch her, others to lift Talon from the horse. His head rolled back, face pale, skin burning with fever. "Get the healer," someone shouted. "Boil water, bring herbs." Naira stumbled to the ground, knees weak, arms empty. For the first time since the abduction, she wasn't holding him, and that terrified her more than anything. "Stay with him," she said over and over. "Please, just keep him alive." The healer came fast, old Misu, hands steady as stone, eyes sharp as ever. "You brought him back?" she asked softly. "No," Naira whispered. "He brought me. I just brought him the rest of the way." Misu nodded. "Then you did more than enough." As Talon was carried into the healer's tent, Naira fell to her knees in the dirt, her hands stained with his blood, her heart pounding with fear. But for the first time, there were others to help, and that meant maybe, just maybe, he would survive. Talon didn't wake the first night, or the second. The fever kept him locked in a world she couldn't enter, his skin hot to the touch, his breathing shallow and fast. The healer worked around the clock, pressing herbs into his wounds, changing the wraps on his leg, trickling medicine between his lips. But it was Naira who stayed. She didn't eat much. She didn't sleep. She sat beside him, legs folded beneath her, one hand on his arm just to make sure he was still warm. Sometimes she whispered stories from their childhood, the time he taught her how to climb trees, the day he carried her across the river after she twisted her ankle, the night he swore to their mother he'd always keep her safe. "You didn't break your promise," she whispered once. "You came, even when no one else did." Villagers passed in silence, leaving bowls of soup or water by the door. Some nodded with respect. Some lowered their eyes in shame. No one had gone after her. No one had followed Talon. He'd walked into danger alone, and now everyone knew it. On the third night, Talon stirred, just a twitch of his hand. Then his lips moved. Naira leaned in close. "Water," he rasped. She poured a small ladle and lifted his head. He sipped, coughed, then drank more. When he opened his eyes, they were glassy but focused. "We made it." "We did," she said, smiling through tears. "You brought us home." He tried to sit up but fell back with a grunt. "Don't move," she said. "Your leg was infected. You've been out for days." He blinked slowly. "How long did you sit here?" "Since we arrived." "You should have rested." "So should you," she said, wiping his forehead. "But we're stubborn, remember?" He chuckled weakly, then winced. "Laughing hurts." "Good," she said. "Means you're still alive." Later that day, Chief Wiyaka came into the tent. His face, once unreadable stone, now wore deep grooves of guilt. He looked at Talon, then Naira, then lowered his head. "I failed you both," he said. "No," Talon said hoarsely. "You just waited." "I didn't." "You were braver than me," the chief said. "Than all of us. Your sister is here because of you." "No," Talon replied. "She's here because of both of us. I got her out. She got me home." The chief nodded. "You've both earned more than honor. You've earned change." He stepped aside. The council had gathered. One by one, they entered. Warriors, elders, even those who had once said Talon was too young. They knelt beside him. They thanked Naira. They asked forgiveness. Naira listened quietly, nodding, but said little. Her eyes never strayed far from her brother's face. That night, Talon slept again, deeper but calmer. No fever, no shaking. Naira allowed herself to lie beside him on a woven mat, eyes heavy. She didn't know how long she slept. Maybe an hour, maybe more. But when she awoke, Talon was awake too, staring at the roof of the tent, fingers gently tapping her arm. "You're still here," he said. "Of course," she whispered. "Where else would I be?" He turned his head toward her and smiled. "You're stronger than they'll ever know." She took his hand, holding it tightly. "So are you." Outside the tent, dawn began to break over the village. Birds called softly. Fires were being lit. Life was moving again. But inside, nothing else mattered. Brother and sister, alive together, with a story that would never leave them. Not even after the scars had faded. It took more than a week before Talon stood on his own. The infection had nearly taken his leg, and the fever had stolen much of his strength. But every day he forced himself to sit up, then to lift his weight, then to balance. Naira was with him through each struggle, steadying him, encouraging him, refusing to let him quit. "You didn't survive all that just to limp forever," she told him. "You didn't carry me through mountains to stay in this tent." Talon would laugh, wince, then try again. Word spread quickly. The boy who had gone after the raiders, the boy who fought them alone, the boy who returned with his sister clinging to life and still protected her the whole way home. But he was no longer just a boy. They called him something else now. Talon the Blade. Not because of his weapon, but because of how sharp his courage had cut through their fear. On the 14th day, he asked Naira to help him to the fire circle. She hesitated. "You sure?" "I need to walk in front of them," he said. "Not for pride, for truth. They need to see I'm still standing." She nodded and wrapped his arm around her shoulder. Slowly, step by step, they emerged from the tent. The sun was rising behind them, casting long shadows across the packed earth. Conversations faded. Children stopped playing. Elders rose to their feet. No one spoke. No one moved. Talon leaned hard on the crutch carved by the healer's apprentice and took each step like a vow. He didn't look at the ground. He looked forward, at the warriors who once doubted him, at the men who had called him reckless, at the women who had cried when Naira vanished and done nothing after. He looked at his uncle, the chief, who now stood with tears shining in his eyes. Then, without ceremony, Talon stopped at the center of the circle and turned. "I didn't come back to be honored," he said, voice quiet but firm. "I didn't go after her to be remembered. I did it because no one else moved." The words struck deeper than any blade. He didn't need to raise his voice. The silence around him made every word ring like truth on stone. "We are only strong if we protect our own," he continued. "We are only proud if we stand for each other. Next time, it shouldn't take one boy and one girl. It should take all of us." Naira stood beside him, tall and calm. The bruises on her face had faded, but the strength behind her eyes had only grown brighter. Slowly, one by one, villagers stepped forward. A woman brought a carved necklace, the same kind given to warriors. An elder offered him his own bow. A boy brought firewood and knelt before him, saying nothing, just placing it at his feet like a gift. The chief stepped forward last. "Talon," he said, "you have taught us more in 2 weeks than I have in 20 years. You changed us. You reminded us of who we were supposed to be." Talon looked at him but said nothing. The pain in his leg burned, but his heart felt lighter than it had in days. That night, a new fire was lit in the circle, not for mourning, not for ceremony, but for healing. And when Talon finally sat by the flame, with Naira beside him and the whole village gathered in quiet respect, he felt something settle deep in his chest, something like peace. Weeks passed, but the memory of what had happened did not fade. The forest still held echoes of hoofbeats and whispered warnings, but in the village, something had changed. Talon no longer walked with a limp. The crutch was gone. He moved slowly but with strength, each step measured, steady, and witnessed. The children who used to mock his quiet nature now followed him, asking to hear stories of the mountains, the cave, the chase. He never glorified it. He spoke of fear, of pain, of mistakes, but he also spoke of choice, how standing still can be more dangerous than charging forward. Naira, too, had changed. She had returned not as a victim, but as a voice. She helped the women weave cloaks again, helped the hunters prepare supplies, and she taught the younger girls how to move through the trees, how to watch the wind, how to trust their instincts. When one girl asked her, "Weren't you scared when they took you?" she replied, "Of course, but fear doesn't mean you stop moving. It just means you remember what matters most." That answer spread like fire. Elders repeated it. Mothers taught it to their sons. The village held a gathering at the first sign of spring. It was not to honor a single person, but to honor a return. To life, to courage, to remembering who they were. A new drum was carved. A new story was sung. And in that story, a boy named Talon went into enemy land not for glory, but for love. In that story, his sister never gave up on him, not even when he bled, not even when the path was lost. They called it the Trail of the Two, and it would be told for generations. Talon stood at the edge of the firelight that night, watching the children dance, watching the elders smile again. A few warriors approached him, men who once dismissed him. They didn't speak long, just clasped his shoulder. One said, "I was wrong about you." Another said, "You remind me of my brother." A third added, "If trouble comes again, you will not ride alone." Talon didn't need more than that. Their silence had once been louder than any insult. Now their words meant everything. Naira came up beside him, holding 2 carved necklaces. She placed one around his neck, the other around her own. "What are these?" he asked. "Symbols," she said, "of who we are now. Not what happened, but what we did about it. You think the story's really over?" "No," she said, smiling. "Stories like ours never end. They just change shape." They sat together near the fire, not as survivors, but as something greater. The village around them was alive with music, laughter, and the warmth of something more lasting than fire: unity. And as the stars appeared above, stretching across the sky like a blanket pulled tight over a tired world, Talon finally allowed himself to rest. Not because the danger was gone, but because he knew he wouldn't face it alone anymore. He had been called reckless, foolish, even a child. But now, when people spoke his name, they did so with pride. Not just as a warrior, not just as a hero, but as a brother. And in a village rebuilt by memory, courage, and the kind of love that endures the hardest winters, that title meant more than any other.